This is Evangelist Gay. I just decided to do a late night live, and I'm going to really take it easy on this one because I wanted to have a word. It was a word that I had for pastors that really blessed me and impressed me with the Lord, and I kind of wanted to mix it in with this word that I have that's in the title. The title is called Thank You for My Test Results. Thank you for my test results. But first, I want to talk about the message that God gave me for pastors and for leaders, apostles, followers, whatever you want to call us, saints of God, so that we would understand the role and the burden that pastors have. And I can see myself as an expert at this. So I'm able and more than qualified to talk about this. I keep looking this way because my stepson is letting the dog in. Anyway, I'm able to talk about this because, first of all, God gave me the word, and second of all, I am very well versed in this thing. Hey, can you put the dog up, please? So, uh, let's get started. First of all, let me pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, I pray that the words and the thoughts that you put in my heart for this message will be a blessing to those, the hearers, so that they may be doers of your word and just that they may meditate on what is about to come forth out of this vessel of clay that you've made and you molded and you saved and sanctified, God, and set apart and justified, Lord. And I thank you, God, that if you are for me, who can be against me? Thank you that in this day and age that the coronavirus, Lord God, is not bigger than Jesus Christ. And I thank you that during this time, God, that you'll reveal all your secrets unto your people, Lord God, knowing that much of this came upon all of us unaware, maybe not some, because you have some prophets that predicted this day or some prophets that knew of this day. You prepared me for this day. I didn't know the whole matter, but God, you said in your word that we prophesy in part, and we pray in part, we prophesy in part rather. But when that which is perfect is come, that which is in part shall be done away with. And that simply means that we don't know everything, but God will give us bits and pieces of things, and we're able to speak those bits and pieces. And then when that perfect time comes, God reveals the whole matter. Amen. And so I do want to thank God for being prepared in some ways and having things on hand and having the money. And a lot of us really ought to appreciate the Lord for being on our side because we did have tax money, or some of us did. I didn't do any taxes, but some of us had tax money. We have children that bless, us, and we just thank God for that. Thank God that we were not left without, and thank God that many of us have provision even now. So let me get into this word about pastors. I'm going to talk about three people, three followers of Jesus. And I'm going to talk about, I think I'll talk about Mary Magdalene in the middle, and I'll talk about Paul first, and then I'll talk about Peter, and then I will wrap it all up and let you know what I'm thinking and what God has given me. But God gave me this a little while back, and the message that I put on the screen, I'm going to give that to you at the end so you'll tune in to this whole entire conversation. So I'm just having a conversation with you. And in this conversation, I'm talking about Paul and the love that he had for God. Now, before Paul was converted, A lot of people think that his name was changed from Saul to Paul, and that after he was converted that he got a name change. That's actually theologically not true. What happened was his name was Saul, and that was when he was Hebrew. And in the Greeks, when he began to minister to the Gentiles, that's when they called him more often Paul. So he was actually the same person. It wasn't like when God changed Jacob's name, and when he had stole the birthright, that he wanted his name changed because he was kind of conniving when he got the birthright. But not to get off the subject, and his name was changed to Israel. Uh, or Isaac, was it? No, 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 no. But anyway, let's go back to Paul. Paul was a person that thought he was doing God a service when he was taking the Christians and taking them and sentencing them to death, and causing them to be killed for the gospel's sake. Paul was really intent on his job. He thought he was doing God a service when he was killing Christians, because he thought that they were disobeying God, and that his job was to bring them to justice. And because he thought that, he was just confused about, well, not confused. He was actually unaware of what he was doing. Like many in the church, when they do things, they try to keep certain people from doing things because they're afraid that they're going to get too close to the pastor, and that they're there for that reason. Or they may think out of service, and they are persecuting Christians. And that's what Paul did. Paul actually, when he was called Saul, as a Hebrew, he was doing what he thought was his job. And so, that being said, we can't get upset at individuals when they do the wrong things toward us, because they are misguided. They're misguided. And because they're misguided, we have to be patient, and we have to understand the role of a pastor. The role of a pastor is to be the shepherd of sheep. All the sheep are not always going to be guided out of their own mind correctly. Sometimes they are misguided. And when they are misguided, it is the pastor's job, not our job, to guide them to where they're supposed to be. And sometimes we think it's our job, like Paul thought it was his job to crucify Christians. We think it's our job to decide who's supposed to be where and who's not supposed to be in the church. And you hear a lot of times where people say, oh, so and so's gone because they were not supposed to be here anyhow, because, they weren't treating this person right, or they weren't teaching correctly. And that's not always the case, because one thing about it, and two things for sure, most of the people that are called to the church or that go to the church are there for a good reason. And the only person or the only entity that would want someone to be out of the church would be the enemy. So, to make a long story short, when Paul was on his way to persecute Christians one day, Jesus Christ, in the spirit of Jesus Christ, not Jesus Christ before he was crucified, but after he was crucified, spoke to Saul and said, Saul, why persecutest thou me? So he was explaining to Saul that you are persecuting me because you're killing Christians, and you're thinking you're doing me a service, but you're not. So what he did was, after he spoke to him, he blinded him, he knocked him off his horse. And when he was knocked down, he had to be led. He was blinded. So sometimes individuals that are misguided end up getting blinded, or end up having to be led to Christ. by someone else. And thank God that the pastor has individuals that work for him, as Jesus Christ had individuals that worked for him, that knew how to convert and to train and to get a person that is misguided and get them guided in the right direction. Comes from the help that the pastor has around him, the disciples, the apostles. And Paul himself was an apostle of Jesus Christ. As a matter of fact, he wrote a love letter to Christ, and he talked about the constraints that were on him because of his love for Christ. He loved Christ so deeply, and he was one of the apostles that it didn't matter if he saw Christ. He loved Christ. He didn't see the physical being of Christ like some of us. We're born again, and we don't even know how Jesus looked in the natural in real life because we're in a different time. But we're like Paul, and we are constrained by our love for Christ. So it constrains us, it keeps us, it holds us, and it causes us to be in love with something that we cannot see. And so deeply in love was Paul that he talked about the sufferings, knowing him in the sufferings, and going through the sufferings of Christ, proving his love for Christ. And he was told, even in the book of Acts, that he would suffer many things for Christ's sake. But he said, the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. And so Paul was so in love with a leader, his pastor, his Jesus Christ. And we have pastors with individuals that are like Paul, that were like Saul, that loved God so much that they were thinking that they were doing the right thing when they might have manipulated, or they might have spoke against, or they might have um, uh, 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 cause someone to leave, or just whatever the case may be, because of their misguided love. But when they become truly in love with Christ and they become converted, they spend most of their time, when they go from Saul to Paul, and loving on Christ and showing their love for Christ through the love for God's church and God's people. And that's what Paul did. He spoke to the Galatians. He spoke to the church of Corinth. He spoke to the church of Philippi. He spoke to the Romans. He actually was the main person or apostle that ministered to the Gentiles. And Paul, he actually confronted Peter, because Peter ministered to the Gentiles. But whenever Peter was around the Jews and the Gentiles, he would act like he didn't really know the Gentiles. So he really had a little hypocrisy going at some points, where Paul confronted his hypocrisy. And he said the same gospel goes to the Gentiles as it goes to the Jews. And he constrained those that were preaching the gospel that were Jewish to not put the constraints on the Gentiles that the Jewish people were doing. All these thou shalt not do and thou shalt not do. Of course, we know that the law is good in of itself, but when you have the Holy Ghost and you have the Spirit of Christ, you don't need the thou shalt not. You just don't desire, or you're convicted if you do. So we thank God for Paul, the Apostle Paul, and the help that he gives the pastor, and the constraints that the pastor has. He has to love on those Sauls and those Pauls, and he needs to use them. He knows that there's something down on the inside of them, even if they're acting like they're Saul. There's something on the inside that he has to, as a pastor, constrain himself to love on them. And I told some saints one day, I said, you can stop waiting around for the pastor to put any Sauls out of the church because they have to become converted to be Paul. And so, if you're looking for that and you're wondering why they're being used or why they're still being called upon, it's because the pastor has a wide range of being able to see beyond your faults and see your needs like Jesus Christ. So, let's go on to Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene was, whoa, what a woman. She was the woman that was converted at the feet of Jesus. When she was putting the oil on his feet, she was converted at the feet of Jesus. Just listening to Jesus, she was converted at the feet of Jesus. And she was the first person, one of the women, put it like this, let's do this in order. One of the women that were there as his followers, just like the apostles, she followed Jesus. And she was there when he was crucified. And not only those two things, but the third thing is she was there when um, Jesus rose again. And she was the first person that heard the first words of Christ. And he told her to go get the others, tell him that he has risen. Now, I looked at that and I said, God, this woman has such a love for you. And she, in the Bible, was a harlot. She was from a destitute life. She had been mistreated by men. She had been abused by men. She had been taken advantage of by men. And she had been used for money. And she was converted. She changed her life. Now, if she was a harlot, then she had to be a bad show enough, show enough. She had to be some woman that was beautiful and had it going on, or, as we say in these times. And so she had probably had everybody's eyes raised whenever she came around Jesus. And she just loved him so much because of who he is. You know that song, Because of Who You Are. I really love you. Because of who you are, I give you praise. Well, that's how Mary Magdalene was. She loved him because of who he was, because he was a man of God that didn't mistreat her, didn't see her as a harlot, didn't see her past, but saw her future. And that's how pastors are with women when they come in the church. They have to entreat those women that have had past lives that were not quite raised in the church, or were not quite raised in the proper family, or was misled, or went astray, or just had a hard upbringing, and they were in what would you say, ladies of the night. And when that woman wanted to put the oil on his feet, when that woman wanted to worship Jesus in that manner. Now, I'm not sure if in the Bible they say that woman is Mary or not, but when that woman wanted to put the oil on his feet, Jesus said, leave her alone. Really, she was anointing Jesus for that day. And sometimes we do things and we don't know, when we're sowing a seed into the man of God, or when we're giving a word unto the man of God. Sometimes that person needs that encouragement, that stir, that push from a Mary Magdalene, and he can't get it from neither one of you. Sometimes he needs that encouragement that she gave him all the way up to the cross. See, there are times when our men of God, our women of God, that are pastors, that are leaders, that they are so torn. They're going through so much hurt. They're going through so much suffering. And you would never know, because when they show up, they're still going to show up with a smile on their face, willing to lay their life down and pray for you. And the only person that really knows how deep some of those wounds are can possibly be a Mary Magdalene, because a Mary Magdalene is one of those women that no matter where he goes, she is going to be there. She is going to follow to the ends of the earth. She is going to support that man of God like Mary Magdalene supported Jesus. She is going to be there from the beginning and in the middle and to the end. That's that Mary Magdalene love. Mary Magdalene, when she first met him, she learned about him, didn't want to go nowhere, wanted to just be at the feet of Jesus. And then she was at the cross, seeing him go through his deepest hurt. You know, God is not going to always show everybody in the congregation, all the apostles will not know the deepest hurt that a pastor or a leader is going through. But God will reveal it to a Mary Magdalene because he knows that he can trust Mary Magdalene. He knows that he can trust Mary with the pain of Jesus and then the resurrection of Jesus. Isn't it awesome how God had at that very point, at that triumphant day that he came on the scene, he was greeted and saw first by Mary Magdalene instead of some brother from another mother, instead of some man or someone else. His mother wasn't there, but Mary Magdalene, God had her there because he knew she would understand and she would be able to express that resurrection in a way that nobody could. So she had to be the first to deliver that message. She had to be the very first. And a woman has a way with delivering a message that a man does not have. So God has a woman for the scene. God had a woman for Jesus. God has a special Mary Magdalene in the congregation, more than one for the man of God. So, because he has a Mary Magdalene for the man of God, and those Mary Magdalenes are essential for the kingdom, then we have to allow the pastor to have these individuals in his congregation there to encourage him, to support him all the way through. And I just do believe that there are there are a lot of Mary Magdalenes all over this world, but there are very few that have been way down to the guttermost. That when they come up, they're really a true Mary Magdalene that knows what it means to have a love showered on them that they didn't have from any other man or could never have from any other man. That's why a lot of Mary Magdalenes, I believe, are really, really hard to please. Because once the love of Jesus comes on you, like it did on Mary Magdalene, boy, that man of God has some hoops to jump through, I tell you. But thank God for the balance and the natural that he puts in that woman of God. So, anyway, let's go to the third person, apostle, follower of Christ. Now, this person I really, really like talking about, and that is Peter. So, let me just reposition myself because Peter is my dude. Peter is just he is the absolute. Now, Peter did so much in the Bible when it came to Jesus. Peter was always on the scene for those most momentous events. Peter was there to get Jesus to another level, just to get on his nerves, probably sometimes. I think sometimes I'm a Peter. But anyway, uh, nevertheless, Peter was like this guy that you got hanging around you, and before he's hanging around you, you looking for a group of men, and here you find people fishing, and Peter was one of them. And you say to these men, pick up your nets and follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. Well, Peter was the type of dude that will follow Jesus and say, okay, you're going to make me a fisher of men. Okay, well, when you going to do it? What you going to do? How we going to do this? I can just imagine. Because the very time that they got in a boat, Peter challenged Jesus and said to Jesus, if you bid me to come, I'll come out on that water, Jesus. So Peter was a person that Jesus could be minding his own business or talking to the disciples. And I just can imagine Peter was there always with the disciples. And they always probably wonder what Peter gonna say next. What Peter gonna do next? So, a pastor has to have a Peter in the group. You got to let him have his Peter. And so what he did, and I'm not even using the scriptures, I'm just telling you a story. So what he did was he said, Jesus bid me to come and I'll come. And he challenged Jesus. That's a miracle that he was able to step out of that boat and walk on the water. And who knew if Jesus knew if he could do that when he did it? But Jesus said, okay, come. And Peter stepped out and he came and he stepped out there. See, every pastor rather has to have a Peter in the group. One that's going to step out there and say, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it. And see, the thing about Peter, I can also imagine, and you probably can too. The thing about Peter is he got on some folk nerve. Peter's get on folk nerve. If he always the one raising his hand in class trying to answer the question, that seemed like how Peter was. They say, anybody got an answer to the question? And everybody in the class quiet. But, Peter's going to come around and say, I do. And then and sometimes Jesus probably had to say, hold up, Peter, let me just find out if anybody else know. Like when he was talking to them and saying, who do men say that I am? Who do you say that I am? And they said, oh, some say you're John the Baptist. Some say you Elijah. Some say you this, some say you that. And Jesus said, but who do men say that I am? And he was probably trying to give everybody opportunity to give the answer. But here comes Peter. Peter said, hey, I know the deal. This the one that raised a hand in the class all the time. And Peter said, you are Christ. You are the Son of the living God. You are Jesus in the flesh. That's who you are. And Jesus stopped right there. And he said to Peter, you know what? Flesh and blood have not revealed this unto you, but my Father which is in heaven. So he had to have some Peters, because Peters have revelation knowledge. Got to have some revelation knowledge in your group of those of your disciples and your believers and your followers. Got to have it. And Peter said, I know who you are. So that can be intimidating sometimes to a pastor when they have a Peter, because Peter knows who you are. Peter knows you, pastor. He sometimes gets things revealed, that he knows. But one thing about Peter was that homie that was with Jesus, and he knew who he was. He was able to say who he was. God revealed secret things to Peter. And Jesus said, upon this rock, I'm going to build my church. In other words, he said, upon that revelation, he's going to build his church. So he took one revelation and built his church on it. And he got it from a Peter. Now, Peter will give you revelation knowledge, and you can take that and you can build on it as a pastor. You can build on it in your ministry. You can build on it in some of your words and some of your sermons. And when you preach, you can take one word from a Peter, and you might not have had to studied all week, and you can take that word from Peter and you can take it and you run with it. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus took that one word that Peter gave him, that revelation, knowing who he was, and he ran with it. And he said, you know what? I'm going to build my church on that. I'm going to build my church on that foundation. Peter is a guy or a person that is following Jesus in the congregation that you can build on. You can build, and you can build on what he says. But Peter also was the guy that felt like he had it all going on, felt like he had everything figured out. And he's hanging with Jesus hanging with him. And then you got James and John. Those three, they were really close to Jesus. And Jesus was able to take them to the Isle of Patmos so he could reveal to them who he was. And he didn't take anybody else but those three. And he knew he could take them because he knew that they wouldn't say anything about it they until the time come, and that he could share that with them. And all the disciples didn't go, but just those three. So you can see in the Bible that so many times that Peter was right there with Jesus, right there. But then when it came time to go to the cross, then Jesus talked to Peter about the test that was coming to him. And he said to Peter, Peter, when the cock crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. He said, when the cock crows, you're going to deny me. Peter swore up and down because he thought his faith was so strong. And most Peters, they may think that they got it figured out and they're in the congregation and they got the revelation knowledge and they going on strong and they standing with the Lord. And he said, you're going to deny me 3 times when that cock crows. And Peter swore up and down, I'm not going to do it, Jesus, because Peter really rightfully thought that he had it all together and figure it out. Because here it is, Jesus then told him, you had the key, you had the answer, that God gave you that answer. So Peter is already with the big head thinking, oh wow, I get revelation knowledge, I get to step out on a boat, I get to challenge Jesus, and he still got me rocking with him. He ain't asked me to leave. I can imagine. Peter was a mess, but Peter was also good for Jesus because he always challenged him. But God showed Jesus that Peter was going to deny him 3 times. So sometimes, pastors, Peters in your church will make you feel let down, and they may hurt you because they may feel like, oh, I got to deny him now because no, I don't know him, because of something that you may decide to do and they don't understand. So that's how Peters are sometimes. So going to the cross when he got captured, Peter didn't understand that because, of course, you remember when he got ready to get captured, first Peter chopped the man's ear off, and Jesus had to pick the man's ear up and put it back on his ear. And so Peter was just, he was also thinking that it was a natural kingdom that had to be protected. So there are sometimes Peter's in their mind, they think, well, this is more important. This thing right here has to be protected concerning the church. And they may not know the answer. And so they may take a misstep and they may cut off somebody's ear. So you got to watch them Peters. Yeah, but the Peters are needed. The Peters are there. The Peters are there to show us that, yes, you can be up and you can be down and you can be tested and then come back from the test. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you about that because so many people don't understand the makeup of a church. And that's not all the avenues and the designs, but that makeup of the church body lets you know that everybody is not the same. Everybody in the church body doesn't come to Christ the same way, and they are not the same. But he loves us all the same. And that is how a pastor's heart is. That is the word that I had for a pastor. Now, how does that tie in to this? And I'm going to stick with Peter and I'm going to tell you how it ties in to the title of this message. The title of this message was called Thanks for the Test. I believe it's called Thanks for the Test Results, or Thanks for the Test, or for showing me my test results. And so what I'm saying is I'm relating it to where we are today in the society today, where the world is in a dilemma and the whole entire world is being challenged with quarantines and distancing and social distancing and not being able to travel the way we want and want to be able to travel and move the way we want to move. And all our freedom and our liberty has been taken. And I did show you the outside of it. And I talked about how the government set up to try to take our liberties, but how it can backfire on them. Well, the Bible says all things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to his purpose. So that what they propose to do is going to work for our good. And one way it's working for our good, and this is what I'm talking about, thank you for my test results, is because when the test came, what it did was showed us our results. It's like with the coronavirus. Some people are getting symptoms of allergies. Some people are getting symptoms of hay fever. Some people are getting symptoms of the virus. And some people are literally dying from the virus. And we have to pray for those souls that are remaining behind that have to deal with the loss. But the thing is, the test, see, God allowed the test, and God allowed the test to show us where we are and to give us our test results. It's just like with the coronavirus. A lot of people are getting sick and wondering if they have the virus. They're thinking in their heart if they have the virus. Why? Because the test has come to their body. There's a test that has come to their body, and it's challenging them, and it's making them wonder, and it's seeing where their faith is lining up, and it's seeing where their thoughts are, and what their belief is, and what their hope is in, and how much fear they have. And so this test came to Peter, and when they asked him, did he know Jesus? He said, no, I don't know him. They asked him again, did he know Jesus? He said, never heard of him. No, I don't know him. And the third time they asked him, did he know Jesus? He denied Christ 3 times. So God sent the test, or allowed the things that are happening to cause this test to show us how undone we are, how not prepared we are, how as Christians, how ununited we are, how not prayerful we are, how we are not fasting, how we are so out of tune. And it's like my bishop said tonight. He said that we are on an even playing field. Whether you're a millionaire or a nair, you're on an even playing field right now. So all of this is affecting everybody in the whole world, even the president and all the rich people, because they're watching their stocks plummeting. And the test is coming. The test is coming to show the world that you're not ready. And thank God for the test, because this test with Peter, it showed him that he was not ready. And it was required to show him that, so it could show him where he truly is in his heart. And so the test results for us, just like if you're tested for coronavirus and they say you're positive, then you have to do something about it. This test that has come to us to show us that we're lacking and that we're unequivocally, we're just not prepared. We're not prepared. We weren't prepared. And even though some of us were somewhat prepared, we still had no idea. And the saints of God are not supposed to have anything that comes upon them unaware. And sure, I had a vision, and sure, I wrote it down. But did I take heed to it? No. I just was able to use it as an aftermath and say, okay, in December, I wrote down in 2019 that we were going to have pestilence, because I had a vision of spiders on the wall. They were hopping spiders. And this is how this virus has gotten on people. It has hopped from person to person to person. It has spread like that. And so, yes, but did I study it? Did I take heed to it? Peter, after that, he was gone. So when Jesus came back on the scene, the first thing he asked, well, not the very first thing, but when he got with the disciples, he said, go and get Peter. I don't care how much Peter get on your nerves. I don't care if you just wish Peter would go. I don't care if you wish Peter just would not be around. The first person that Jesus wanted them to go get that was not around, he's always looking for Peter. So your pastor is always going to be looking for that Peter. He's always going to be looking for that person named Peter that has that revelation, that has that thing that Peter had. that bravery that Peter had. He said, go get Peter. And I said all that to say this, that even though God has found you in this test, that you have not been where you're supposed to be in your love for him and your fervent prayer for him and your desire to serve him in the way you serve him, whatever way you were undone, if it was all of those things wrapped up into one, or if it was two or three, because definitely it is not just one. We have all been caught with our pants pretty much down like Peter. But one thing about it, God is coming back. Jesus is coming back on the scene to say, where is Peter? He's coming back on the scene to say, where are my saints at? I showed them through the test, their test results. Now go and get them. Bring them here. I want them to see that I'm risen and I'm bad to the bone. And that now that I'm risen, I'm going to endue them with power from on high when I go sit at the right hand of God. I hope you enjoyed this, because this is the message that God gave me in two parts. And he didn't allow me to release it yesterday because the other part didn't come until today. But I wanted to tell you that. And I wanted to say, I thank God for my test results, because it has caused me to examine myself, my life, my walk, and my talk. And what am I going to do next for God? God bless you. And I hope that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Evangelist Marilyn Gay. If you like this, go to YouTube and just type in my name, Evangelist Marilyn Gay, and be a real subscriber. It doesn't cost anything to click subscribe on my YouTube channel. God bless you, and you have a blessed day. Bye for now. Bye-bye.